Okay, here we are with standard setup. The cue ball is look at center, and I'm just showing some of the pivoting that you can do, and you could pivot from both sides. So if you see I'm coming in, you have to really watch my thumb and forefinger. See how it's very subtle difference between being on the left side of the cue on the table and how it moves slightly, just a little bit when you pivot in. So you could actually pivot from the left or to the right, and you could actually pivot from the left and kind of move into a right position. It's almost like It's almost like going across the ball. And ideally, of course, if you know CTE a little bit, you have to end up with the center cue ball, and that's the hit. First, initially, you're going to do an offset, which is a half a tip left of center, and then move into center. The pivoting this is a manual pivot, so you're kind of manually pivoting it in based on two fixed lines in CTE traditional. I tend to use, as I may have mentioned in previous videos, a CTE version like a 90-90 type, which is a little different. It's more like a single line visual. In any case, I'm still going to go to center, and that's where I'm going to hit the object ball. As I may have mentioned before, your hand should be about, it's recommended 12 inches. I think it's a little longer, 10 to 12 inches. I happen to use around about 7 inches difference on the average. So that's your hand to the cue ball. If the shot is short, it's generally advisable to keep your hand a little closer. As the shot goes longer, it's more of a lengthier bridge to cue ball distance. But this is the concept. The object ball faces you like this with A, B, and C lines. Those familiar with it know those lines, and then just a dot on both sides for the 1/8. So these equal lines, and if you're looking at object ball, that's the way it kind of should look at. This is one of the first fundamental shots in the CTE videos you may have seen. It's just a basic shot. It's here more or less for reference. So when you line this up, you're going to be lining up left cue ball edge to A, and what I'm showing right now is a 15-degree hit. In other words, about 15 degrees from the cue ball. Now it's around 30. Then you go to about a 45-degree hit, and if you move it slightly more, at 60 degrees, which is a pretty deep cut. You could probably even shoot further than that, but it's a real tough thin slice. In most cases, I find that the majority of the shots that you hit are 15 and 30-degree perceptions. And that's, you'll see later in the video, that's pretty much the case. What I'm doing right now is just showing some of the lines, so you could set these shots up on your own. You'll see me pointing to sides. But this object ball is pretty much from the dot on both sides and the corners, so you could set it up. The cue ball is just a little bit below the spot and in the middle of the dots on the bottom and the left side. So what I'm doing right now is I'm kind of aiming towards A, pivoting from left to right, and I could get this ball right in. If I wanted to, I could pivot the other direction and do the same thing. Now this is of CTE's visual, so you have to look at it as a visual point of reference in terms of getting the shot. If you find the pivot doesn't work or it's just off, then you know something is wrong. Maybe the aim line is incorrect. This is pretty much a straight shot, but again, I'm pointing it for reference purposes on how to hit this. In this case, it's either an A or a B. 15 or 30 degrees perception. You're going to look at it based on two fixed edges. I'm going to move the cue ball a little bit forward so you can see that I'm going to hit center cue ball and just kind of pivot over. This is a manual pivot. Generally I would just move into the shot and just hit it right in. So the manual pivot works. It's almost mechanical kind of way. It's just almost done, and you're really kind of fixed where you should hit. Kind of the same story based on the lineup, but it's pretty quick. Once you get established with this, and once you learn it, if you haven't already, then you're good to go. You just line it up, and it's just easy. Now this video, I'm setting up this, but this video is going to be based on a different point of views from different angles. So in other words, I'm going to use Ghost Ball. I'm going to compare it with CTE. I'm going to also use my CTE 90 style, which is my style, which I like to use, which is kind of a one-line visual. And I'll just call it CTE 90. It's kind of like a 90-90 morph. And then there's something called Mr. Pivot, which is kind of a goofy thing, but it's just a pivot that you've probably seen around that you could use. It's utilizing a one tip, either left or right, depending on the cut, from the center cue ball, and what you'll do is just hit the object ball dead on center, and it allows you to get the ball in. It works for most of the shots, 15 and 30 degrees. It probably won't work for a 45-degree angle because of the nature of the cut. So in this particular case, this is just one tip left. This is Mr. Pivot, I'll call it in this video. It's one tip left in this case because you're going to the right. And these shots kind of work wherever you are, as long as it's not like I said, a serious cut. If you're doing basic shots, which is most of the shots, you could utilize this. Same thing, I'm going to kind of move it over a little bit. If you get the concept down pat, it definitely works. And you're aiming for the middle of the object ball. It's probably a good thing for beginners, so they can get established on just how to hit the ball. One tip over. Now it won't work here because again the angle is too narrow, too short. But if you move it there, it's fine. So keep in mind, we'll call Mr. Pivot. Kind of works. It does work. Here we go with a shot straight up. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to pivot one tip over from left to right, center cue ball, right to the center of the object ball. Same story. Here you go into a little bit to the left, and you're in. All right, so here we have the a lineup of an object ball. It's kind of aiming towards the center pocket, very easy straight shot, and the cue ball is on the dot. The object ball is pretty much parallel with the dot on the left and the dot on the bottom. So if you're setting up for reference, this is where it is. There's an imaginary ball in my way, so I can't hit it in the side, so I'm going to go for the corner. This is left cue ball edge 8, and you're going to pivot from right to left. You have to work on the pivoting side, see which is best. Sometimes it's an opposite pivot is preferred. So if you're cutting to the right, you have an opposite pivot from left to right or right to left, depending on the cut. So it's usually you pivot from the opposite side of the cut. CTE doesn't allow too much in terms of things like swerve, deflection, etc., etc. Even if on an excessive position, you have to keep it down a little bit because it does transfer the ball into another area, and it does have limitations. So you could use, of course, English and follow and draw back and everything else, but maintain that you have to really work on that to maintain any kind of a shot making capability by narrowing down. So what I'm doing here is just trying different aiming systems, whether it be Ghost Ball, CTE 90, and then CTE. Here's a Ghost Ball version of it. And Ghost Ball is something that everybody's been using for years. It's I guess just basic tradition forever and ever. Unfortunately, I hit that a little bit fast, so that didn't go in. Ghost Ball is great, but you have to remember the point of contact as you measure it, usually with a stick, and you could point it out to that spot. And there we are. And there's another couple of Ghost Ball shots. So it's like I said, when you have maybe all of these type of things in your bag of tricks, so to speak, you'll be in good shape. Another ghost ball shot. There's a CTE 90. CTE 90 is basically, in that case, was you're aiming from the right side of the cue ball, left side of the object ball. These balls are parallel. The object ball is parallel to the side pocket, and we're going to do a series of shots straight up. Not a very difficult shot, but in any case, you still have to work on it. So CTE, left cue ball edge to object ball B. This is a 30% perception. You kind of move your stick over. I'm doing some manual pivoting on this, and you're in. There's your ghost ball. I'm pointing it right to the corner. You have to remember where you hit. No problem there. I'm lining up the same lineup so we can get kind of a comparison to these things. And this is a CTE 90 version, so it's left cue ball edge, right object ball edge. I just move over to center, and you're in. Here's the famous, notorious spot shot, and I'm using Mr. Pivot on this, which is really kind of a 45-degree angle, and it did go in, so that was a surprise. Generally, I like to keep Mr. Pivot down to some of the lower percentages cuts. So here we have another version. The cue ball is parallel to the dot. Object ball, as you know, is on the spot, and we're going to line it up. We're going to go to a CTE left cue ball edge to object ball A. Line it up. Move the pivot over, and that was way off. You have to really realize why is it off. I mean, did I hit the pivot wrong? Was it the aim line wrong? You go back, you kind of like review it, because some of these shots work, whether it's ghost ball, CTE 90, whatever, and you have to really figure it out. So I'm going to do this again. I'm going to really concentrate a little bit more on the two fixed lines. And again, I'm moving it over. So this is kind of mechanical, so you're moving it over, and the pivot does work. Here's the CTE 90, so it's right edge cue ball, left edge object ball. Moved it right over, and boom. Ghost ball, just about made that one in. This is a shot that I've seen in another video, and they said it was a little difficult. It is, a tough shot. The object ball is in the center of the table, parallel to the side pockets. The cue ball is on the spot. You really want to put this in the right corner. In this case, we're going for the right corner. So it's a nice 45-degree perception. I'm going to use ghost ball. So you point out the spot that you got to hit. Hopefully you can remember that spot, and it landed in. So I'm lining up. This is a CTE, which is a one-line visual, so it's a nice cut. What I'm doing is just lining up that right side cue ball, left side object ball, and it was off. It's not as like I said, this is the kind of thing you really have to go over it, review it, study it, go back, and keep on working on those shots to figure out why it didn't work. Sometimes you could be off, so I do it again. One line visual. There you go. These are some basic CTE shots or 90 shots, just showing that you can work with these kind of shots. It's almost like edge to edge, and like this is my style, which I like. It's a little faster. CTE you have to utilize a little bit more in terms of setting it up. This is a shot. The ball's in the center. The object ball's in the center of the table. Cue ball's a little bit to the right of it. Probably almost a little bit above the middle dot. And there's an imaginary ball on the side, so that's an easy shot. You don't want to go there. You want to go to the corner, and you're going to set it up accordingly. So let's do it ghost ball. You're going to point to that spot, and that went right in. Same shot. This time we'll work with, I believe that was a CTE-90, which didn't work. We're going to come back, and now we're going to use CTE, which is a one-line visual. Actually, I think CTE traditional and CTE 9090 is pretty much the same when you go do these one lines, because it's almost the same setup. I tend to use both, so either one works for me as well. And here we are with the same shot. We're going to do it one more time. When you step in, try to put your left leg behind the cue ball. This is a CTE 90 shot. You could set up with your hand behind the cue ball, and it's almost like you move into the shot. A lot of shots I move into now. I don't use that much on the pivot side, but sometimes you can when the shot's difficult. These are just some basic CTE shots. Once you kind of get a handle of it, sometimes you can measure, sometimes you don't have to measure it. I've been doing this for a little while, so I kind of got used to some of these shots in terms of hitting it in without that much measurement. And as you get more acclimated with the technique, you tend to use it and move in more. It's much easier just to move into the shot. You're kind of set up with your backhand, your bridge hand, so it's just a little bit easier just to move right into the shot, and you'll establish yourself quickly once you start getting into this after a little bit of work on it. So I threw out some 15 balls. Now I use CTE, it's almost like a little bit of ghost ball, a little bit of CTE, but I am utilizing CTE on these because I'm hitting the edges of these balls. Most of these balls, as you can see, are not really difficult shots as yet. They look like almost all of them are 15 to 30 degree hits. So I'll tend to come down. I'm setting up the next shot. This is off camera. This is probably a little bit of a shot, probably more of a 15%, or hitting the A on that ball. Position wise, you just do the same position that you would do regularly, whether it be some English you could use. You'll see some of the English being held on some of these balls being pushed in, and just to get that little bit of a position that you need. Here's another shot. This is kind of a little bit of like a C. You can see it come back, so it's a little bit of a cut. You could utilize. See, that came back a little bit. You could utilize the position that you need in terms of getting around balls and coming up. If you have to use a little bit of left and right English, it's not a problem. Sometimes you have to compensate for it. Excessive English might throw you off, so if you're really putting a reverse English shot, then you really got to look at it. The shot is kind of straight, so it's all, like I said, B's. I like to hit straight shots using 15% or A. Straight shots, you could kind of you could look at straight shots in terms of coming in from the outside. It's maybe a little easier. Almost got stuck here, but the ball is makeable. It's just really close to each other. Look like a 30%. Ball came back nicely on that one. So thanks for watching the video. Here is my bead counter. It's on eBay. It's a mini. It's called a mini bead counter. It's it's a nice thing for straight pool players. It has 50 beads per player. Every bead is marked 5 and 10. Lightweight. You could put it in your car, leave it at the pool hall. It's just a nice thing to have. So if you have a problem with some of the beads, the counters are too high or just not available, this is a nice piece. It's on eBay for $25, and it's a nice thing to keep around if you do it. And if you use it, of course, in straight pool, it's great, or even 9-ball, 8-ball, whatever. The video is just something that I put together. I thought it would be a little bit helpful, but all in all, I use almost all of these systems whenever it comes into play. And if you could use all of them, part of them, or just one of them, it's still good. CTE is something that you have to study. As you see, there are some misses, but you have to come back to the drawing board and figure out the best solution. Work on the pivot if you do the manual pivot, and you should be set. I mean, it kind of lines up. If you once you start utilizing it, your shot making will definitely get better. I've been using it for a couple of years, and I really like it. But it's hard to start with it. You know, there's over 100 videos in CTE, and yet there's still a lot of questions. Okay, I wanted to just show this. This is an interesting thing. You know, you often have to put on a tip on your cue, and this metal piece is available out there. It's, you've probably seen it. It's a ring around the collar, and the collar goes and presses the tip. So if you glue the tip, you just put the ring down, but the ring can sometimes indent your cue. It's good to put maybe a little postcard or some kind of a card there, maybe from a magazine, so it doesn't do that, and then you have an imperfection. But I found this to be even better. This is an elastic strip. Usually you tie it around when you get a shot, when the doctor gives you a needle. It's a little tourniquet. It's on eBay actually, and you could buy these for probably $1. You just stretch it over. It's very long. It stretches around, and you could bring it down, and then put a little clip. This clip is $1 at Staples. It holds the tip really nice, very snug, and no problems in terms of scratching or anything. It's just really ideal. So thanks for watching, and welcome any questions.